Hey, I'm Chris Taylor. I just wanted to welcome you to my backyard.
Hey y'all, this is Jason Gould. Thank you so much for listening to Mastermind Midland. We are on my good friend Chris Taylor's back porch.
We've got dogs barking, cars driving by, we've got the grill firing up over here.
You're going to hear mowing yards, you're going to hear all of that. We hope it adds to the experience, and we thank you so much for participating and partaking in our conversation today.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, we're drinking coffee, which is weird, right?
Yeah, so today, as with everybody's life, we had a scheduling conflict and had to rearrange. So we're actually filming in the AM, watching the sun come up. It's pretty much up now, but we did get to watch it come up, which is unusual. And so we're going to skip on the bourbon because I don't roll that way at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to have some coffee.
But you do roll with your redneck slippers.
Oh, yeah, man. Like, it's early. I'm still comfortable. Like, I haven't gone out into the world yet today. So I'm comfortable in my slippers.
I like it, dude. Perfect touch for this episode. Breakfast.
Yes. So, today we're going to be doing kind of brunch. We've got some mimosas that we're making.
Attacked by a fly.
Got this Blue Nun 24K Gold Edition. And everybody's always like, why would you buy champagne with gold flakes in it? And it's like, well, after I drink it, what goes in must come out. And, man, who else do you know that shit's gold?
Oh, man. Hey, talk to them about you being a pirate, because that's perfect for... So we're endorsing Black Rifle, or Black Rifle Coffee's endorsing us, right? Right? Because we're, showcasing some of their products here.
Love Black Rifle. Of course, we're not sponsored.
We're not getting any sponsors.
Yeah, we don't have any sponsors. If we tell you something we like, it's because we like it, and we think you'll probably like it too.
Black Rifle Coffee. You are a pirate, right?
I've been called a pirate before.
There's a story behind that.
Okay.
That's a great way to start off. Tell us that story.
So this is really a story about leadership.
Okay.
As counterintuitive as that may seem, talking about pirates and leadership and how those might not mesh. But I think that a lot of what we talk about on our podcast is about transformation. And I think there is a level of pirateering that goes into transformation. And when I was in the Navy, I remember there was a period where we had some really, really bad leadership in my direct chain of command. And it was just a period in the Navy. I wouldn't say that's the norm, but there was a period that we had some really bad leadership that took extreme advantage of everybody's time in the position we were in, where we pretty much have to follow instructions. And if they want us to work, we have to work. It doesn't matter if we want to or not. Like your contract to the military, they can use you however they see fit within the confines of the law, which is pretty broad.
Right.
And so we were working obscene hours with very little time off. Had a lot of issues across my whole department. And so I remember they had us on a really stupid schedule. We basically didn't get to go home, and we were gone all the time anyway. So we were pierside, and still weren't able to go home on a regular basis. We've been gone, deployed for months at a time, come back, and they're keeping us on the boat, just working the crap out of us for whatever reason. I don't even know. No good explanation. Once again, poor leadership.
Right.
So there was zero buy-in in the department. And so I was pretty senior at that point, and so I had kind of gotten to where I was sick of it, and I'd heard everybody else is sick of it, and I was like, man, like, we're a critical department on the ship. Like, we should just rebel against this and generate change. And anyway, that went pretty far.
Okay.
Farther than it could or should have. But anyway, it resulted with all of us kind of like walking out, like kind of going on strike in the military, which is not a thing that you do in the military.
Yeah.
And ended up turning into a really awkward, bad situation. But it did open the eyes of the leadership. The goal was accomplished. But I ended up getting pulled into office with my commanding officer, and he actually called me a pirate that was leading a mutiny.
Oh, wow.
And I was transferred shortly thereafter.
To your face, yes.
Yeah, and so
Oh, man.
that was when I first was associated as a pirate. But the thing from my perspective is I wasn't intentionally leading a mutiny. I just wanted to generate a transformation in the mindset of the leadership and be like, man, like we want to work, we want to do a good job, we want to meet the needs of the Navy and do what we came here to do, but we don't want to do it in these extreme circumstances at home.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I understand extreme circumstances when you're in the Persian Gulf,
Yeah.
when you're off the coast of Iraq or Afghanistan.
But you guys were
And
stationed.
we were stationed out of San
stateside.
Diego, and we were in San Diego. It's like, guess what? We're not at war in San Diego, so
Right.
we need to tone this war mentality down a little bit because it's not the same.
Yeah.
Man, when people got guns pointed at you versus taco trucks outside, like,
I want the taco truck.
I want the taco truck.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that we can't split the difference and still do what we need to do.
Wow,
And I had a lot of respect from the guys because I did go to bat for them, and I did say this is unacceptable and I don't support this. And
Yeah.
and in the eyes of my senior leadership, that made me a pirate.
There you go. I just love the fact that you just own that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love pirate stuff, and it's like, okay, well, it is what it is, and it's about taking what you want.
Yeah.
Is what piracy is about, and I think that there's as many positives as negatives to that. As entrepreneurs, are we not pirates going out into the world and getting what we want?
Yeah, if you're not disrupting something, for sure. Yeah, if you're not displacing the establishment in some way, shape, or form, you're not doing your job.
You're
as
not
an entrepreneur.
effective.
You're not impactful. You're not effective.
Right.
Because or else, what's the purpose of your existence? If it's not
Exactly.
to come up with something that's innovative, revolutionary, and just new.
Sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, hey, we've got a very good conversation. This entire season is built to this conversation, so we're not gonna so we're not gonna be drinking with bourbon when we have this conversation. What are we gonna be drinking with today, sir?
Gonna be having the mimosas.
Not coffee either.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have some coffee too because it's still morning, and
Yeah.
but
we'll be
man,
switching.
morning's not over till noon, so
There we go.
we're gonna keep on having some coffee. But I do like a refreshing mimosa in the morning from time to time. Helps lube up the conversation a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting.
And you want a crap gold.
And I want to crap gold, dude.
So,
I mean, if we're gonna go into piracy, it's like, man, you can't be like, exactly, man. Like,
That completely
we're after the gold, bro.
redefines the term booty.
So mimosas are super easy. Little bit of champagne. You don't have to have gold in your champagne.
No, you don't.
But it does make a fun conversation
Yes, it
piece.
does.
And then throw in some orange juice. So we're gonna mix up some of these here.
Simple today.
Super
and
simple.
effective.
Yeah, it's these are super easy to make. They're very effective. I know, like when I was a kid, whenever I was at my dad's, my stepmom loved to go to this place called Copeland's, which was this Cajun restaurant on Mother's Day every year.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things they would do is a mimosa brunch, and that was one of her favorite things. And she always let us try them, and I always thought that they were just kind of a refreshing, easy drink for the morning. And so I've always kind of liked them. I don't do it a lot, but I do enjoy it.
I love it. I was introduced to mimosas. My wife and I were in Puerto Vallarta for our 10-year anniversary. When my wife first married me, I was too poor to afford for us to go on a honeymoon. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
So we did a little one in Amish country. I took my Mexican wife, who had never been up north, to Amish country in November
Wow.
for our honeymoon. Yeah. Talk about being young and dumb, right? But yeah, we definitely made it right, man. Second honeymoon was our 10-year anniversary when we went to Puerto Vallarta. Had a great time, and I mean everything in the resort was amazing. They had unbelievable breakfasts, and you had I was introduced to mimosas, There in the morning, margaritas for lunch, and then after dinner, mojitos.
Sounds like a long, rough day.
No, it was a great day.
Very cool. So what are we diving into today, Jason?
What the primary operating principle is from the perspective of a technical breakdown.
Okay.
So I think that in our investigation, we've built everything up to this point. I mean, man, we have established who, right? We've established why. We've established where. And now I really want to delve into, and I'm missing one, but now I want to when, yes, and then now I want to delve into the what. And for our last episode, really talk about practical application. So our next conversation,
Sure.
we'll take today's conversation and we'll bust into the how.
Right.
So let's just talk about what, tease the how, because next week we're really going to spend our time diving into the
execution.
The execution of it, the practical application.
Yeah. So today's more procedural.
Yes.
Of how do we get to this place, and then next week is like, cool. What's it look like in action?
And I can only imagine listening to our conversation or these past conversations from the perspective of someone who doesn't know us and that's just tuning into this podcast. I mean, personally, I'm like, okay, this is great. Now you guys have got to get to it. What is it?
Right.
Right. So let's break down it. And I actually kind of want you to start off, man. If you don't mind.
Sure.
If not, I have no problem taking that. Yours, though, I want you to. You and I are definitely in absolute agreement that if you're going to do this, it's got to be all in.
Absolutely.
So as you're breaking it down, and what, just so that the audience knows, what we're going to be doing is speaking from our experience. So from the automotive, give a technical breakdown on what the primary operating principle is, how you break it down into your field, and I'll talk about how I break it down into mine. But when you talk about yours, man, if you can really just highlight and hammer that home, how you cannot half-ass this.
Okay.
And with that being said, I'll turn it straight over to you, dude.
Cool. I want to take a minute and just really dive into the fact that moving in this direction, transforming your business and your future in this way, really has no tolerance for half measures. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a lot of people about it, and the biggest temptation we have as business owners, and I know lots of business owners,
yes.
And I'm part of several organizations that have a lot of business owners in them that we're really tempted to dabble.
Yes.
To see if it's going to work, because as we know, every change that you make in business costs money. You have that obvious upfront cost. Whatever that is, whether we're changing, adding staff, whether we're changing our equipment, whether we're increasing our marketing or our presence or whatever it is, there's money that's going to be changing hands just at the starting line. There's an entry fee, if you will.
Yes.
And because of that, we get really nervous and say, man, I want to try this out at the lowest cost and see if it generates the ROI that I'm looking for before I really throw in.
Yeah.
And
which is understandable.
it's understandable. And I think there's a lot of places in business that's acceptable, reasonable, and honestly a good practice.
Yes. But this is not it.
This is not one of those events. I think that moving into the primary operating principle with focusing on the relationships and automation is moving in with half measures is actually detrimental to your business, that it will ruin you. It will take everything you've worked for, totally collapse it, and then prevent you from actually achieving the level of success that we know is capable using this. And the reason that happens is because if you go halfway in, that means that you have not completely engulfed and redefined your business using the primary operating principle, which means that you have inconsistencies in your business by dabbling in this. What will happen is you'll treat some customers differently than others for whatever bias or metric that you equate in your head to value. And your client base and your staff will take notice, and it will ruin their perception of you and ultimately ruin your business, because I believe perception is reality when it comes to business and finances. And if they perceive you as inconsistent or unauthentic or dishonest, then they will stop coming. Your employees will stop coming to work. Your clients will stop coming to your office or place of business, and it will slowly dwindle down to nothing. And the problem is it'll happen so fast because that word spreads so effectively that by the time you recognize it happening and you draw back to your safe place, it's already too late. And you'll actually lose your business by dipping your toes in the water in this realm.
Okay, so let's go and put some flesh on these bones here.
Okay. I've been working at this for the majority of this year, and I continually add to it, but I will say that everything that I have done, I've committed to wholeheartedly. I've committed to providing an extremely positive client experience in my business. I've added a lot of additional services, and we'll talk about that more here in a little bit about adding value. I think that's really its own topic, but that's where I started. And then what I've really done as far as is really spent a lot of time getting my staff on board. I think that was really, for me and my business, one of the most critical points, because if I don't have the buy-in of my staff in this primary operating principle and really making relationship number one, I need to facilitate that by making them my number one relationship priority, and then really expound upon the importance of them making their relationship with my clients their number one priority, and mirror what I've given to them to my clients. And so we really pass this whole thing down. So I have to bring the energy. And that's something that I really struggled with for the first 2 to 3 months of moving in this direction, to be honest. Is I'd go in and I knew what I wanted. I knew what it looked like. I had a super clear vision of what this was going to look like at fulfillment. And every day I had the same conversation. You guys don't have the intensity. Y'all aren't bringing the heat. Y'all are doing the actions, but there's no passion in it. There's no intensity in it. And I'd have the same conversation every day, and I'd go home every night disappointed. How come my guys aren't bringing it?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized after going to a conference and seeing, I'm sure a lot of you guys have been to a conference where everybody's standing up and they're yelling and there's all this intensity in the room.
Yeah.
Guess what? The guys in the chairs aren't bringing the intensity. The guy on the stage is. And that intensity swells within the room. And it clicked. I was like, the reason the guys aren't bringing the intensity is I haven't given it to them to intensify.
Okay.
And that I needed to go in and I needed to give them the intensity that I was looking for and let them run with it.
Okay.
And that's a really important factor in the things that I've done. And I think that a lot of you viewers out there will see that same circumstance. You're like, well, how do I increase my intensity? And that was my question. I had that question for months. And it just took me witnessing a transfer of intensity to really make it click for me and be able to execute on it as the owner or the manager, and go back in there and be that loud, proud motivator. Not just motivate them because I'm giving them what they need to succeed, but actually giving them the energy that I want to see returned back or executed on in the workplace. And going in the morning and I'm excited and I'm smiling and hey guys, how are you doing today? It's going to be a great freaking day. Like, I'm so proud of what we did yesterday. I think we can do even better today. And really just being that guy, that super motivator. I mean, being the Tony Robbins of my own personal business.
Yeah. It speaks a lot to, there's a mirror to Delta's value proposition. So Delta is a Louisiana-based airline company.
Yep.
I forget who they bought out. But Delta's been around for a very long time. Their entire value proposition was, we're fanatical about our employees so our employees can be fanatical about our customers.
Yep.
And when you were speaking there about the breakdown, the genesis of what the primary operating principle is. In the end, even though we haven't really achieved that yet in the conversation, what you definitely highlighted was this lagging indicator that you have it is a passion.
Yes.
And it's definitely a passion that you as the owner have on your leadership team has for your team, and then your team has for your customers.
Absolutely. I think that's step one. Without that being established, you could do everything else, but it wouldn't have the impact that we're looking for.
So how are structurally you different from other automotive shops on being relationally focused in those quadrants?
As far as being relationally structured, we've really just shifted how we do business.
Okay.
And it's just nuances. Everybody's like, well, when I talk to people about this, they're expecting this really grand, big transformation where we literally take this out and plug this in, but it's not, man. It's such a tweak. It's so minimal as far as the execution of it, but the hardest part of it is adopting the mindset to buy into that and not backslide into your previous way of doing business.
Okay.
And it's something that I constantly fight against, and we're getting to a place where I'm not fighting against it anymore. Not nearly as bad, where everybody's starting to see that this works. But I tell the guys that we're doing this, they're like, hey, that's cool, whatever, we'll follow you, because I'm the leader.
Yep.
And they're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but we'll go with it. Let's see how it works. And it's so important that they get to understand the process the way that you understand it. And it's so important that they actually get to see it in execution and get to see the results of it and say, man, this is actually working. I remember when we first started doing this, like we changed a little bit about everything in my business, where, you know what, we're going to offer a lot of value up front. Like before, we did nothing without anybody paying for it, which is kind of my industry standard, and I can appreciate that standard. That's the way that business has been conducted in the trades for, man, the last 60 years, honestly. Right. For real, 60 years, and nothing's changed. It's been the same way. It's like, I'm going to do good work at a fair price, and you get what you get.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the mentality that our dads and our granddads had and experienced in their business transactions and the businesses that they owned and operated. That's just how it was. Just show up and do a good job and charge a fair price, and that's good enough.
I remember working for AutoZone and as like a second part-time job, which is hilarious if you know me working at AutoZone. But the value proposition of AutoZone was, don't take your car to your mechanic, take it to us. We'll do the free diagnostics. We'll go ahead and get the code for you.
Right.
You know, that type of stuff. So yeah, I totally can see that, to where everything you do, including running for a diagnostic test, you're going to charge for. That's kind of the attitude.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up AutoZone. That's a great example. So like in my industry, that's changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. So you get AutoZone and O'Reilly's doing free code checks. And they call them diagnostics, even though that's not diagnostics. It's a diagnostic scan. Using a diagnostic tool.
To be fair, I was probably using the wrong term.
No. Well, I appreciate that you brought it up. So, I mean, that's not what this podcast is about, but I'm all about generating awareness about my industry at the same time. So I think there's value here, and it's worth taking a couple minutes to go through. So your diagnostics, everybody believes the computer tells you exactly what's wrong with the car. That couldn't be farther from the truth. It'll tell you what system has a problem. It'll tell you what components in the system are seeing a problem. But we don't have the technology that a computer is going to tell you everything with a complex piece of machinery that has 30 computers, miles of wire, 25 different systems, and all this stuff has to work together to perform a simple function of go down the road, blow cold air, blast the radio. Like, that's all the consumer sees, and I understand that perspective, but it is a complex piece of machinery. It's the most complex piece of machinery that almost anybody in America operates.
Sure, without a doubt.
I'm not saying there's not more, but as far as general use, It is by far the most complex piece of machinery anybody operates.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly okay with them not understanding how it operates.
Sure.
Because there's a lot there.
Yeah.
But we end up with a place like AutoZone. We do free diagnostics. Why would you go to your mechanic and pay for this?
Right.
Well, what AutoZone does and what a mechanic does are totally different, because a mechanic starts there, and but he actually goes through and runs all the tests and tells you exactly what's wrong and what's going to take to get fixed. AutoZone says one of these 3 parts will probably fix your car.
Yep.
And there's a big dynamic difference between one of these 3 things might fix your car and this is absolutely what's wrong.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from that perspective, which is difficult to see because which one's telling me the truth, because we've got so many bad businesses out there that take advantage of people's lack of knowledge of a complex system.
Yeah.
And rip them off or give them bad diagnosis or charge them for things they may or may not do. And so we have a bad reputation, and then we're always in this constant struggle of who do I trust? Who do I trust? Who do I trust? And so to overcome that, I've had to adopt the primary operating principle. So I don't have to have this conversation with every customer, because I'm going to provide so much value up front that there's literally no risk for you come to at least
As
have
a
a
customer,
conversation
me
with
coming
me.
to your shop, there's not the risk that there is associated with going to a normal mechanic.
That you get charged for dropping it off, basically.
Right. Yes.
And that's the way they do business. Cool. You drop it off, it's going to cost this much to do this. And I'm not saying that that's even unethical. I think it's perfectly ethical, because you're creating a real expectation. You're delivering on that expectation. But the problem with that is, I don't really know what's going on with your car yet, because I've never even looked at it. You're handing me the keys at the counter, and then there's the other thing of what are they actually going to do with my car from the other side of the counter, and what am I paying for? And we've abolished that process and said, man, let me just look at your car for free for both of our benefits. A, I know what I'm getting into, and B, you're going to know what I'm getting into as well. And we can get on the same page before we ever exchange funds.
Okay,
and
I want to ask one more question
Go ahead.
before you turn on the grill and go ahead and get us started, because it's right along those lines. Then from a structural standpoint, from the front end to the back end, let's try and tackle it this way.
Okay.
How do you structure the business, which is different, utilizing the primary operating principle? Because it's going to be different if you utilize the primary operating principle, right?
Yep.
So from the front end, we know that you do these tests for free. There's risks because, well, you just said there's not risk, but they're kind of...
There's no risk to the client.
There's no risk to the client. There's risk to you because you're spending time on something that you're not getting paid for.
Right.
That you may not do work on.
Correct.
Okay, so walk us through.
Okay. So...
If you don't mind, because I know you're going to be delving into trade secrets.
Man, I don't even mind. I am totally transparent in my business at this point. I will tell anybody anything that they
Walk us
ask
through
me.
it then.
So my process is a 9-step process from beginning to end.
Okay.
And I've broken it down and I've simplified it for both my staff and my clients. So that way there's an expectation from ground zero of everything that's going to happen through our entire relationship.
Okay.
Or transaction, or however you want to look at it. My staff knows exactly how it's going to happen and what the important factors at each one of those steps are and why they're important, and what we are doing at each of those steps and why we are doing it. And so step 1 is let's bring it in and let's do a free check on it. And all that is 10-15 minutes. I use that as a client interview process, basically, and we get to know each other. I want to know what your priorities are. Like, what do you use your vehicle for? What's the impact of you going without it? And all those personal things that most shops don't care about. Honestly, that's not a conversation that I've seen in any shop I've been in. And I've worked in multiple shops, and I know lots of people that own shops, and those aren't common shop conversations. They're there to fix your car. I'm there to fix the primary problem in your life right now, which lack of transportation is creating.
Nice.
And
so right off the bat, step 1,
identify the real problem.
well, you've established a relationship with a customer that most mechanic shops don't.
Right.
that person, they know nothing about that person.
Yep.
You are identifying who that person is, what their day-to-day life looks like, and then you're contextualizing the problem of their car around that.
Right.
And that is such an important shift right off the bat.
It is. So, especially in service-based businesses, you're providing a solution to a problem. The problem that we've had in service-based business for the last 60 years, and it wasn't a problem 60 years ago for a number of different reasons. 60 years ago, people dynamically created really strong relationships because that's all we had.
Sure. Small communities, small towns.
Exactly. And
That
so
does
I'm
not
not going
exist
to,
now.
these things naturally happened 60 years ago. And so we didn't have to build processes around them because you knew who you were doing business with or you didn't go there.
Yes.
And you knew what was going on with their family and you knew what the impact was in their life from whatever their problem was. And you genuinely cared about the person. Through the 80s and 90s, there was a dramatic shift because everything was growing so fast. Technology was advancing so quickly. Somewhere in that mix, we got really focused on profits and lost track of relationships.
Okay.
And that's not universal, but it is the common theme.
Sure, without a doubt.
And
Why we're having this podcast.
in the last 10 years, people have recognized that as an issue because we don't have that relationship dynamic. It's purely transactional. We don't know who we're doing business with. They don't know who they're doing business with. And there's these trust issues and all these other things that I'm not going to say never existed, but they existed in very small volume.
Sure.
And now they exist in large volume of problems where people are unsatisfied, people aren't loyal, people don't trust people, people get ripped off. I mean, how many scam emails or scam phone calls do you get every single day?
Yeah.
Like, we live in a world of dishonesty, and you have to be skeptical of everything. And it's so important to build and develop relationships in business so we can overcome that. We're past that. I can talk to you and have these difficult conversations that you need a $20,000 repair because your motor is bad.
Okay.
And you can believe me that I'm not ripping you off because we've established that that's not who I am already.
I'm gonna sneeze.
Oh, bless you.
Excuse me. Okay, so take us back to the second
Okay.
step here now. Okay, so you've established that on the front end. So
we
where do
established
we
that
go
on
from
the
there?
front end. From there, we determine what their priorities are. We figure out what the status of their car is. That's like, cool. Let's figure out what's going on and what road we need to go down. So that way, I can present my clients with a real roadmap of what it looks like to get their car fixed and a general idea of what we're up against and how long it's going to take, and answer all their questions, ease their fears, and be able to address all their real concerns and help them find solutions to how am I going to circumnavigate this until we get to the finish line. And we do that like, I stress to my staff, like, cool, I have a customer call in, I'm broke down on the side of the road, I was taking my kids to school. Awesome. I'm going to send someone out to where you're at right now. I'm going to have them give you and your kids a ride to school. I'm going to have them take you back home or to work. So that way your immediate problem right now at 7:30 in the morning is solved. My kids are at school and I'm at work or home. While all that's happening, I've got a wrecker driver going to pick up that vehicle and bring it in so I can have it checked out by noon. So that way before your kids get out of school, you know what the rest of the day looks like and you can make plans.
And how much do you charge for that?
Nothing. That's my upfront value. I'm going to solve all of your immediate problems right now, and we'll figure out what the business transaction looks like later if there even is one.
Someone would look at you and say that's crazy. But what I would say is rather than monetizing that transaction, what you've done is you've built relational capital.
Yes. Well, here's the way I look at it. And I've had people say, oh, well, you're spending all this money. I'm paying someone to go give them a ride. I'm spending the gas. I'm paying for the wrecker service. I might have $300 to $500 invested in a customer that I don't even have any guarantee is going to do business with me.
That's why they're saying you're crazy. Yeah.
But what that does for me is, A, it separates me from the competition because nobody else is doing that because it seems crazy.
Sure.
It allows me to have an opportunity to show customers what I'm about without a commitment from them to see if we're fit for each other. What that's going to do on the long term is it's going to allow me to capture market share, because I have people that would have never walked into my shop walking into my shop and get to experience what I have to offer with no risk and no transaction. And
Yeah.
you know what,
100%.
for some people, I'm not the right shop, and I'm okay with that. What's great about this process is I know for sure at the end of that, we both know we're not. And I don't have to go through this again with those people. They're
Yeah.
not going to come back, and I'm not going to continue to serve them. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a shop that fits their needs more appropriately, and that's great. Now we know. And that allows me to test out clients and see if they fit my business and my business fits their needs on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And run through that. Like,
Yeah.
I would like to have everybody in my community come through my shop at least once.
Yeah.
That way, the ones that fit are going to stay, and the ones that don't fit are going to go. And because I'm doing so much better and so differently than what anybody else is doing, most of them are going to stay. And so 3 to 5 years, I'm going to own market share. My business is going to grow simply because
Yeah.
I provided no risk opportunity to do business with me and see what that
Yes.
looks like.
So we're only on step 2 on your journey here so far. What I'm hearing you describe to me, though, is a driving process. This drives your business.
Yep.
And you created this process around this idea that this process will primarily operate on focusing on developing this relationship with someone you don't know as fast as possible by, one, meeting their immediate needs free of charge to them, and removing all of the upfront risk of them coming to you to do business.
Right.
Okay, so take us on to the next step.
Okay, once we
so
get-
you've got this lady to work. You've got her kids to school. You've got the wrecker in. By the way, if this is a single mom, you have a client for life, and you've brought regardless, you've got a client for life. At this point, you've already secured the business.
Right.
In my mind, but maybe in this hypothetical, I'm not correct. I'm totally open to that. Take us to the next step. So you've got the vehicle towed into your shop. What's next?
Okay, once it's in my shop, we do a free check. We figure out a roadmap. Can we identify easily what's wrong with the vehicle? And a lot of times we can. Cool, you got a blown radiator hose. That's obvious. I don't need to charge you to tell you that your radiator hose fell off, or your belt fell off, or this component's unplugged, or your battery died. Like, all that stuff can be found out in 10 minutes or less and requires very little from me, and I can give you an immediate answer, an immediate price, and get you back on the road today, and you know what the answer is at no charge. Now, a lot of problems are more complex and require further testing, but now that we've evaluated it, we know what we're testing. So it's not a blanket, oh, we're going to run a diagnostic. Well, what's that diagnostic include? I don't know yet. I haven't looked at your car. We don't have that problem. I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. Cool. I don't have any fuel pressure. I need to check your relays, your fuses. I need to test power locally, make sure your wiring's good, make sure the component's good, make sure we're getting our command from your computers, all those things, and we know exactly what we're going after. And
Wow.
that sets me up for success because my guys know exactly what they're doing when they get out there and get going. They're not spending an hour figuring it out. They know what direction they're going in, and I can sell that direction to my client based on the amount of time it's going to take to actually run those tests and give them a real answer.
Yes.
And that works for both my staff and my clients, because my staff loves it because A, they're getting paid for what they're doing, where before we might end up doing a flat rate diagnostic for an hour and a half charge or an hour charge or whatever, and my guys might spend 4 or 5 hours. That's demotivating. What happens whenever you're only getting paid an hour for a 4-hour job? You shortcut it.
Yes.
So, and then what happens to the customer on the other end of that is, why is it taking so long? You told me this was only going to take an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And now trust goes back down because we can't fulfill what we said. Where if I've looked at it beforehand, I can say, cool, I need to run all these tests. I assume that's going to take 2 to 4 hours, depending. I mean, whatever it is.
And you still haven't charged the client.
Not yet.
Wow.
We get to that point, that's when the first approval of monies takes place.
Okay.
And say, cool, it's going to either cost this much to fix your car or this much to run these tests. We do absolutely nothing without contacting the customer and getting verbal or written approval.
Nice.
We do nothing without approval for the client.
Yeah.
I don't spend a nickel without their approval. We're in the middle of an approved job and something changes, guess what? It's phone call time. We do not move forward until they've been notified, understand the situation, and approve the additional charges.
Okay.
And that keeps your trust level high because we've done everything we said we were going to do. And we keep them in the loop. On the backside of that, okay, we move into that, and cool, we get an approval or whatever, and we move on to the next step. Cool. Then we keep them apprised. Cool, we ordered some parts. I'm going to text you, let you know your parts got here. That way they get status updates along the way. So we'll send them a text message out. Parts have arrived. Well, you should have a technician starting on your vehicle at such and such time. Estimated to take this long. Once again, every time we call, we set new expectations that we can fulfill. If that expectation changes where he ran into a problem, broken bolt, it's going to take 2 extra hours. Probably not going to charge the client for that, but I do want to take the time, call, we ran into this problem. Doesn't cost any extra money. It is going to take us longer to get this done. Wanted to recreate that expectation for you, and so that way we can continue to fulfill the expectations we set.
Got it.
Which is key. That is so important that if the goalpost moves, that you make sure everybody knows that it moved.
Yes, without a doubt.
So that way we're constantly resetting the expectation so we can constantly be delivering on expectation. I in business,
Nice.
I've always been taught, I want to flush this out just real, let me turn the grill on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we don't
That's
turn the
important.
grill
We
on,
don't turn
we're
the
never
grill in,
eating.
we're not eating. So
what are you gonna warm the grill up to? Just out of curiosity.
we're putting it on 350 this morning. We're going to cook everything on 350.
Nice, easy.
Okay, so one of the things that I've heard always through business, and I used to really firmly believe this, was under promise, over deliver. Promise you've heard it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm not sure I believe it anymore. And
Well, this will be interesting. Okay, tell me why.
well, because it creates an additional stress on you and your staff to over expound on something that you don't necessarily really actually have control over.
Okay.
And it creates an unnecessary stress that actually creates, from my experience, more failure than success.
Really? How so?
We're always trying to create that dynamic, so we either overshoot our estimate so long so we can freaking do this, and, well, what if you didn't account for the fact they need their car back tomorrow?
That's interesting.
And things like that. And so by under-promising, you're actually creating an unrealistic expectation.
Got it.
Intentionally.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like almost a form of manipulation.
It is.
Yeah.
And then I'm not actually over delivering. All I'm doing is meeting what I knew I could, and I created an unrealistic expectation. So you thought it was going to take me longer, cost more than it actually did.
Yeah.
And it is a psychological manipulation. What I found is in every progression in my life, I have found that most people can't meet the bare minimum. If you really think about it,
Okay.
if you go to most jobs, does anybody do everything they're supposed to do? Just what they're supposed to do, nothing extra, but literally just do 100%.
Probably not.
No. But the reason I've done so well, and everybody's always told me I've done so well, is I followed everything to the letter.
Yeah.
I'm not 110%, I'm not 150%, but I was never 99 either. I was 100. I did exactly what I was supposed to do in the time that I was supposed to do it, at the standard I was supposed to do it at, and that made me a rock star. And it made me realize that I don't need to under-promise and over-deliver. I need to create a real expectation, deliver on it. I want my business to run right at 100%. I don't want to promise 90 and deliver 110, and I don't want to manipulate any of that. I just want to do what I said I would do. And so many people fail to do that for whatever reason, that in its own right is over delivering.
Yeah.
Simply by doing what you said you would do. And that's really all it takes to be a rock star. It's just to show up and do what you said you would.
Yeah.
And that differentiates yourself. So I think the under promise, over deliver is a bad way of thinking. I think that was a product of that 80s and 90s profitability training that we were talking about.
Sure, probably
and
so.
I think that it is detrimental to transparent relationships.
Cool. Do you know what I'm hearing through this? How you're reinforcing the relationship. So I'm your customer, right? Which I am your customer.
Yes.
I'm not going to go to another mechanic. So, but what I'm getting from my perspective as your customer is, I'm getting all this treatment up front. but I'm thinking, okay, what's the catch?
That is absolutely my biggest overcome.
Yeah, and then you're through the process of going through the transaction, the experience of fixing my car. What you're doing is you're reinforcing communication. I guarantee you, from a customer standpoint, the thing I hate the most about taking my car to the mechanics is the total lack of communication, the inability it just seems to be able to communicate. And you have basically put checks in you have put checks in place that communication is constantly happening.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly engaged.
Yep. At every checkpoint, there's communication. At every unanticipated event occurring, there's communication. All those things happen. As far as what you're saying, like, this is unbelievable. Is this even real? What's the catch? When I started doing this, and I started doing this 2 months ago, and I still get that same exact response today. What's the catch? Where am I actually paying for this at? Like,
Yeah.
If you tow it in and I can't afford or don't want to fix it, is there going to be a charge then? Is it free if I do the repairs? And I think some of my clients have actually seen them. I think they just come and take their vehicle to see if I'll let them. But guess what? All those guys, they come back.
Yeah.
Because when I checked out their vehicle for free and I towed it in for free and did all these things for free, they can't even believe that that's real.
Wow.
And I'm going to come and get it. So is there a charge? Surely there's a charge. No charge. Well, can I give you something? I'm like, yeah, give me a Google review.
Nice.
And then a week later, they'll come back. Oh, well, let's go ahead and do all this. Like, I still can't even believe you let me just do that. I know you spent money on it. I can't believe there was no catch.
That's why the primary operating principle is powerful, because it shifts your mind from thinking about things solely
Based off of your bottom line.
Yes.
I don't think about my bottom line. As crazy as that sounds, if we're going to go down the crazy train and we're going to give away hundreds of dollars of value to somebody we don't even know if they're going to come back or do business with us or not, like, let's take that another step further and say, man, like, I don't even look at my bottom line. I heard, I think it was Grant Cardone that actually said it, that he said all these business owners are spending so much effort trying to trim 3% off their bottom line.
Oh yeah, rather than just making more money.
Yeah. How about we focus on growing our top line?
Yeah.
And if we do that,
trimming the bottom
then
line.
who cares what the bottom line looks like? Because our gross profit and our net's going to turn into bigger numbers.
Well, one of the net I mean, as you're discussing this from your perspective, the whole reality of you can't do this half-heartedly is just being showcased. Like, that is so paramount. Oh yeah, now I get why you can't just dabble in this.
If you skip
have to
any one of
to
those things, it negates everything else you've done.
Second is, you have to understand that you are creating relational value. In long term, relational value has more monetary impact than trying to monetize the transaction with as much as you can squeeze out of that transaction on the front end.
I see a lot of online businesses looking at their business models and evaluating the metrics differently. One of the big things that we've seen, especially with the subscription model, I think that I love the subscription model of a business. I think there's a lot of advantages to it. I think that it's good for everybody equally. I think it's good for the clients and the companies. Yep. What I like about it is that they're really changing the metric that they're looking at their business with and say, man, how much am I making? Where once again, we go to our dad's, granddad's businesses. They looked at it transactionally. How much am I making off this job? What's my profit? What's my GP? And they look at it as a case-by-case scenario and make sure that they're making enough off of every job to cover their overhead, pay their bills, and put food on their table. And that made sense for a long time, but we're moving to a place where loyalty is key.
Yeah.
And there's so little of it that we were trying to create a dynamic where I have a huge loyal following from my clients, and I don't have to look at the case by case. I can give away a free light bulb or hook someone up on this free check or a free tow because I'm going to get a lifetime value from my customer that far exceeds this one transaction. I want 50 transactions with that customer, and even if 80% of those have this much meat on the bones, one of them's going to have a lot of meat on the bones.
Yeah.
A couple of them are, but
Yeah.
it's going to balance out.
Okay, that's a segue to another question I want to ask. And I'm sorry, man, if you let me, I'll ask all of the questions. But, okay, so the primary operating principle, just so everyone knows, the primary operating principle is strong relationship focus plus automizing your processes. So we haven't even got to that second half yet. We're still on the first part.
Well,
But
my
we're drilling down on
automation
what?
still ties right into relationships.
But I don't want to get exactly, and it's not like it's a one thing plus another thing. It's like a one thing plus this thing, and then they all tie together, right? But okay, so the reason why we're even operating in a primary operating principle, the reason why loyalty is the key, is because drawing all the way back to our first podcast episode for this season, we're in we have been in an experience-based economy for a while, and we're heading more of that way, not less of that way.
Yeah, it is intensifying.
It is absolutely, for all of the reasons that we have discussed, and probably COVID exacerbated it.
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
it blew it up.
So the idea then is, and what I'm hearing from you, what I want to ask, it's almost like you have to be willing, if you're going to thrive in this type of an economic environment, if you're going to compete in the open markets, you have to organize your business in such a way that you're basically giving away your products. That's why the subscription model reigns supreme, because the products are basically free.
Yep, and then there's transactions by being a user of the product.
So there's a relationship between products and service. It almost feels like products are given away for free as much as is possible.
Right.
I mean, you're still going to charge for the belts and hoses and stuff when you go ahead and do the job.
Right.
But you're not paying for the tows, and you're not paying for the shuttle rides, and you're not paying for a light bulb here or there. The point is, you're giving away products, or you're greatly discounting it to where you're just at cost. That's not where any of your money's being made.
Right.
The service, you're not even really charging for the services as much as the services are tied to this experience that you're trying to generate. And you've described this experience as basically just, here's the expectations, and meeting the expectations every time with consistency, which to me is the definition of excellence.
Agreed.
So your service is all gearing toward this destination called excellence. This is the question. How do you charge for all of this?
Okay. I don't charge for the services. I don't worry about the upfront stuff. Basically, think of a racehorse.
Okay.
Why do racehorses have blinders on?
So they stay focused.
So they stay focused.
Sure.
Okay. All those things that we just talked about that I don't charge for, I don't look at. I don't evaluate them outside of the effectiveness in which we're executing on them.
Okay.
I don't look at them with money. I never do.
Okay.
I am focused on making sure all those things are right, but when it comes to money, let's focus on exactly what we're doing. Let's focus on making sure that the customers are getting what they pay for.
Okay.
And that is dictated by the needs of whatever repair we're doing. I don't get to choose that. I'm at the mercy of their vehicle for all intents and purposes. It's a piece of equipment. It is broken. I don't get to choose how it's broken. I didn't design it, I didn't buy it, and I didn't break it.
Got it.
It comes in my shop. All I can do is evaluate it, tell you what it's going to take to get it back to a previous condition,
Okay.
and that dictates the price.
Okay.
And it's parts and labor. And so
So you haven't actually, I mean, that's what a basic mechanic charges for, is parts and labor.
Yeah, but I'm giving away everything else. I charge
Right.
the same stuff that every other shop charges for, but I give everything else away for free.
Interesting.
And so it's kind of opposite of what you just described, where you give the product away for free and charge for the service. I charge for the product and I give away the service.
Interesting.
And so the product is the parts and labor,
Well,
but
and-
everything else
Yeah.
is no charge. It's included. It's part of the process. That is my value proposition. That is what separates me from the competition.
Got it.
This is how I
That's
win,
interesting.
is because I'm going to go so far above and beyond your current expectation. Because that's where I actually win the biggest, is everybody expects that it's going to take a long time. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be very little communication, and you're going to pay for absolutely everything.
Right. Right.
Guess what? If that's what they came in thinking that they're going to get, could you imagine how satisfied they are when they get what I give them?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd blow that out of the freaking water.
Absolutely.
And without trying. Like,
Yeah.
it's built in.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I totally get it. Well, we're at 360 degrees. That was, man, dude. Thank you for letting me drill down on the relationship aspect of that, and I'll turn it over to you, dude.
Cool, man.
What are we doing?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get these taters going. I've already got them diced and wrapped in foil, but I'm going to go ahead and add some butter to these so that way they get nice and soft and tasty.
Show them beautiful taters to the camera.
Oh, yeah, man. Hacked up diced taters.
There we go.
And so that's basically what I'm going to throw on first. We'll let those sit on the grill for a little bit, and then we'll start throwing on some meat, and then we'll do the eggs last because they really don't take that long.
We went on a family camping trip one time, and we totally underestimated how long it takes to cook potatoes.
Yep.
So we ended up eating an hour and a half past what we were planning for. Just waiting for the potatoes to get done.
Dicing them helps them cook quite a bit faster.
Yes.
And so, because you're not trying to cook through all the density, and that makes it.
Yeah, makes
That makes
total
a
sense.
big difference. But yeah, cooking whole potatoes definitely, especially with the inconsistency of like a campfire,
Right.
makes it incredibly difficult. So we're gonna throw those on, let them sit in here at 350. We'll throw them on the main grill for just a little bit off to the side. I don't want a lot of direct heat to where they burn on the bottom, but we do want to keep them going. So
Yeah, man.
we talked a lot about the relationship, and really we almost should have flipped that around. Wow, we got a little bit of a breeze going on here.
Feels good out here,
does.
especially that it's like,
do with my coffee.
y'all don't realize it's almost October
Here's
and
my
it's still 90 degrees outside. Cool. That breeze feels great.
It does feel great. So normally the relationship side would be on your end, but you kind of handed that one to me. So we'll flip the script and let you talk about automation a little bit, and then I want to bring it back around and really drive home value and value proposition.
Okay.
And I think that comes back into what you were hinting at a minute ago about what you're paying for and what you're giving away. And I think that what you're giving away dictates an inherent value to what you're actually charging for as well. But I want to bring that back around. So let's talk about automation.
Okay. But I'm going to piggyback off a point that you previously made, and that is you can't talk about automation without laying the foundation of relationship, because it ties all back into
because
relationship.
the automation is geared towards pushing more relationship.
So if you bear with me, I do need to lay that groundwork, because relationship focus in my industry does translate differently than what it does for yours. But there's
Yes.
going to be a lot of similarities.
Yes, sir.
And I'd really like to highlight that.
Go for it.
And the one thing that I cannot accentuate enough is that you have got to deliver the value up front. And if you're not willing to deliver the value up front, you do not deserve to exist.
Okay. I want to dive into that just a little bit. So what is delivering value up front? I know we get like coupon mailers all the time from...
Well, you just discussed in detail in your field, sir, what delivering value up front means.
I know in
Yeah.
my field, but let's branch that out a little bit. I mean, if someone sends you a 20% off coupon, is that value delivered up front?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You just want to pull this back and shotgun it with...
Yeah, let's just throw a couple
Let's
different
just throw out
things.
some hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Okay, and why? Because I agree with you. I don't believe that's upfront
Yeah.
value, but we're tempted to think that it is
No.
in a lot of ways, because a lot of businesses think that is a value add up front.
No.
I don't believe it is. You don't believe it is. Why don't you tell us why you don't agree with that thought process?
Probably on many different levels, but I'll just highlight one. The fact of the matter is you can give a coupon on 20% off, but that doesn't deliver any estimable value to me on the front end. Why? Well, okay. You can give me a coupon saying that this product is 20% off. But if that is all your value is as a store, is giving me this product 20% off, then you have commoditized your value. And it is a race to zero.
Right.
Because then I'll just go to another store, and what I'll probably see, and then I'll pass this on to you because I'm interested to get your take on that same question. What I'm probably going to find when I go to your competition is the fact that they're charging me the same price for that coupon you just gave me for 20% off, because legitimately you had raised your margins and you were bringing it back down to a fair market value price.
Right.
So that's kind of how we're framing this whole idea of a value add-in, and it doesn't do anything to build the relationship that I have with your brand or your store offering.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're tying your upfront value add into a direct relationship engagement out the gate. So what you're defining as a value add is if it does not contribute to the building of a fundamental relationship, then it can't truly be a value add.
That's basically what I'm saying, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I just wanted to put that out there and make sure that we're on the same page and our viewers have that, because there's a lot of bad information floating around that, hey, we can do coupons, we can do discounts, we can do promotions.
You've missed the point.
You have, because
Yeah.
if it doesn't generate relationship, then it's not really a value add. It's a gimmick.
It's a gimmick, absolutely.
And I've had long conversations with my marketing team that works on my marketing for my business. They're like, oh, well, all these other businesses are doing promotions or discounts or specials. And I said, I don't, because my shop is special in its own right, and I charge a fair price year round. I will let you put my prices on your promotional items to generate awareness, but that is the same price they would have found if they came in without the awareness campaign.
Sure.
And
Sure.
and so I just want to use those items to get them in the door so they can go through our experience, so that way we can develop a relationship,
Yes.
which then allows us to conduct business.
Yes, and I'll even add further to that and rephrase it this way. If you're not delivering legitimate value up front, you don't deserve to exist. Legitimate value can easily be defined as you as the offering to me as the consumer, that you are assuming risk that I don't have to take
Right.
to engage in this relationship with you. And you have articulated that beautifully.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I'm going to take the risk of towing your vehicle. I'm going to take the risk of shuttling you to work. I'm going to take the risk of, and it's a minimal risk, but running diagnostic screenings just so we can see what we're actually working with. I'm not going to charge you for any of that, because engaging in a relationship with you is worth it.
Yep. I'm investing in our relationship is what I'm doing. I'm not spending that money. It's not a gimmick. There's no catch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm genuinely investing in the future of our relationship.
In 2022, if you're not willing to do that, you do not deserve to exist. That is a very provocative statement for me to make.
I'm down.
But that's how much I believe in this.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay, so the relational aspect of how that translates to me, in my field, advisors do not engage in relationships with clients unless there is revenue to justify the interaction with that prospective client.
Okay.
Period. And I would say each financial advisor is willing to budge on that to a certain extent, but not a whole lot. Like, I may break that to 2 or 3 appointments, right? Like, max, but at the end of that third, we better be doing business.
Yeah, it kind of goes, man, there's an assassin movie that I watched. I can't remember, but the guy's like, I don't get out of bed for less than $2 million.
Oh, that
And
was
like,
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But like, but basically along the same lines, like, I'm not gonna put any effort in this if I don't see a worthy reward in short frame.
Yes. Yeah.
And that seems to be the mentality you're describing.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter if it's like what you would call elephants or grasshoppers, which is what we call them in my industry. Yeah. I know that sounds kind of demeaning, but that's how it's phrased. We live off grasshoppers while we do elephant hunting. Is basically how you build a business as an investment professional, and that's just the methodology. A way to phrase this is at my previous firm, when I went through training, I was told revenue, then assets, then relationship.
Okay.
And it made sense. Like, I knocked on 2,000 doors so I can uncover enough of a need and build enough of a relationship in that short of an interaction with a complete stranger in that type of a confrontational setting, so that I could go back and have a list that I could sell stock to.
Right.
And so there was relationship there, but it was all through the lens of revenue. And then once you've built trust in being able to broker that stock, and that stock did what you said it was going to do, then you would come back and ask for a 401k rollover. And then you would bring them in and you would talk about a portfolio to invest their 401k in. Well, now all of a sudden you're getting more assets. And by getting those assets in that transaction, most of the time it was A-share mutual funds. Well, then all of a sudden now you've generated A-share mutual funds. Basically, you get the commissions up front.
Okay.
So then now all of a sudden you've added to your top line, right? So right. Those assets have added to your revenue. Then you would focus on the relationship, and the relationship would be cross-selling to other needs. So 529 plans, insurance products, right? That type of stuff. And then you can see how when you meet all these other needs, the relationship deepens and you've added another layer to your revenue.
Okay.
But every interaction has a common thread. We're emphasizing revenue.
Right.
The industry changed during the Obama administration, where the Department of Labor came in and instituted a fiduciary ruling. That was hence repealed in the Trump administration, and then the SEC came back with a best interest ruling. So my industry's gone through a complete evolution here in my lifetime, being a financial advisor. So basically now everyone's had to shift from, you can no longer focus on revenue, right? You have to do what's in the best interest of the customer first. Kind of actually pushing people toward that paradigm of being more relationship focused.
Right.
That does not mean that investment professionals put relationship at the top.
They put the appearance of putting the relationship
right. So then what you do
top.
is you switch the revenue and the assets, because it takes way more of a building of a relationship to get assets in than it does brokering transactions.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
So you have to spend more time. Like I said, investment professionals are willing now to go to, instead of, hey, listen, I have a, Chris, I have a company that came through my desk is paying a 3% dividend. It's beat the S&P 500 every time we've had an actual market downturn over the last 15 years. It's a great company. If you have some money right now, I think that you should buy some. That's...
See, and I really don't care.
Yeah, but that's how I started, right? So we went from that to now all of a sudden, instead of asking for the order, now we're asking for the appointment. Hey, Chris, I met you at the door. Man, listen, I'm just trying to build a rock star business right now. I've got plenty of years of experience. I've got a firm that's been around for 100 years. We have an established process when it comes to doing this thing that we call retirement planning. I'd love to sit down, look over everything, put together an actual complimentary plan for you. Does that sound like a good idea? Does that sound like something that we can put on the schedule for 45 minutes? Now all of a sudden I'm asking for the appointment to bring you in to build this relationship in this plan first, but what I'm doing is I'm uncovering assets, and I'm trying to find different things that I can sell you on to bring those assets in.
Okay.
But I would say, remarkably, that's a better job, right?
Sure.
So it's assets, revenue, then relationship. Okay, and then I'll just put I'll put a period on this foundation building that I'm trying to do right now.
Okay.
I came along and said, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to focus on relationship first.
I know. I remember having those conversations when you got started, and like everybody, what did they tell you in your industry when you said, this is how I'm doing it?
I would be out of the business in less than 6 months.
In less than 6 months. How long you been in the business?
7 years, going on 8.
Right on.
Yeah. So with an unbelievable amount of success. So the idea was relationship, then assets, then revenue. In that order. So if you're going to focus on relationship first, you've got to give away a tremendous amount of value. So I just decided I'm going to give away the whole financial planning process for free.
Right.
And that's going to be my driving process of delivering an experience that this person, we will, at the end of that financial planning process, we will figure out real quick if we want to do business moving forward.
Right.
Now,
So once again, you're taking a period of time, you're giving them something that they need or has value right now at no charge, just to see if it makes sense for y'all to do business together. Yeah. If they fit your model and you fit what their needs are.
Yeah, and you have to understand that in my field, there's limited capacity. I can only have so many of those relationships.
Right.
But what that's allowed for me to do is position myself to where I have a tremendous amount of referrals coming in. Because everyone's like, listen, this guy will take care of you. And the promise that I've made to my existing clients is, you can bring someone in because you brought them in and I value my relationship with you. I will put them through the financial planning process for free. At the end, if they're not a good fit, at the very least, they were pointed in the right direction. I was able to put all of their pieces together and show them a big picture and some options of what they can do in their life to go ahead and change their future. And that's a tremendous amount of value. And at the end, what did I charge for it? Nothing.
Nothing.
The trade-off is, when I do acquire clients at the end of that process, I normally get everything.
Right.
Because we've built out the entire plan. Every goal has been articulated, and it's just a matter of, this is all of the money that we have to work with. This is how we need to organize it to fit to each one of these goals. And by the way, we're going to sit down and we're going to brush this out, or we're going to take this out, we're going to brush it off, and we're going to review it every year.
Right.
And I've come to find out that if there's plenty of people, the vast majority of people, including very high net worth people, that are looking for that.
Yep.
And so that's...
Well,
that is
everybody wants a complete solution.
That is the trade-off. But for me, it's an all or nothing proposition.
Right.
I give away pretty much all of the financial planning process on the front end to be able to apply, to structurally apply the primary operating principle in my field.
Right.
Okay. So I'm either getting nothing at the end of that, or I'm getting everything at the end of that. That's how that normally plays out.
Sure.
And to be honest, I'm totally fine.
Believe it or not, I'm the same way. Like, we talk about things like average repair order in my industry, which is if you take all the jobs that you did and you averaged them out, how much was your average repair? Okay. And it really doesn't matter what it is. It's just kind of a tracking metric. But a lot of people get really confused by it because they think, oh, well, if I quote somebody $1,000 for this, and I quote this guy $2,000 for this, and one of them, like, what most people think is like, oh, well, each of them will buy half and I'll have an average repair order of 1,500. But what'll happen is I'll end up with an average repair order of 1,500 because one guy bought nothing and the other guy bought $3,000. And
Got it.
And that's super normal. Is it's go or no go. Like,
Yeah.
I provide so much value that either they take care of everything, or the way we do business and our prices or whatever the case may be doesn't make sense for their position, and they do nothing. And we're the same way. I either get
Yeah.
it all or I get nothing, and it looks wonky in the numbers because it looks like you got a little bit on everything, but the reality is I got 100% of 60%.
There
and I
you
got
go.
0% of 40%.
Okay, yeah, man. No, that's a good way of putting it. To go along with the point that you made previously, is along the lines of like, man, listen, the process takes care of itself. Like, I don't have to sell anything. I am just educating, and I am your guide.
Yep.
Walking you through the front end to the back end of this experience, this process. If people aren't a good fit, they normally remove themselves.
Yep.
Like, if you make it all the way to the end of the process, you're in.
Yep.
Like, there's a tremendous amount of buy-in. So it's not like, from our
Well, to
standpoint
make it to
as
the other end of
entrepreneurs,
the process, it requires them to match your investment.
that's a
We
good
provided
point, too.
all that value up front. If
Yeah.
you make it to the finish line, guess what? You've invested into this thing
Yes.
with me.
Yes.
I've invested up front to show you what I'm about, show you my colors. But once you've passed the threshold, like, you're investing as well.
Well, mine probably even more so than
Yeah.
yours, because mine requires you to disclose and give me information that you would never give a stranger.
Right.
So you're totally invested. I mean, I've got your tax returns, I've got all your insurance policies, I've got a monthly budget of your expenses, I've got your social security statements, I've got all your investment statements. Like,
You know more about their finances than their mom does.
so our industries are definitely different.
Sure.
But it's interesting to see how those principles are transferable.
Sure.
They translate differently, but they're definitely transferable.
Right.
Yeah, man. Okay, so that's probably a good foundation to launch into automation.
Absolutely.
Okay, do we need to throw anything on the grill before I do?
I'm going to throw the sausage on here in about 5 minutes, and
Sure,
we'll get
man.
this thing going.
Feel free to stop me during the conversation or get up and do what you got to do while I
Sure.
go and do that. So yeah, system optimization is important, because in the end, actually, I said that, and that was so tongue-in-cheek. It's important. Well, duh, it's important. It's why it's the other half of the primary operating principle. You can have this type of focus on relationship. If you do not automate your processes,
Then you are going to come up short in the relationship
you
end.
will not be able to have the relationship.
There's just not enough time or money or capacity. Like, you're reducing your capacity by not automating.
Definitely find out really quick that money is not a limited resource when you apply this principle to your business. You will find out that time is a tremendous resource,
Yes.
and you can't give away time as much as you give away money.
Yep.
So that's got to be understood right off the bat.
Well, it's flipping. Everybody that gets into business, this is something that I hear a lot in social media now, and it's true. It's like, you got to stop trading time for money to be able to grow
Sure,
wildly
sure.
successful, because time's not scalable, money is.
Yes.
Where we're on the other end of this thing says, hey, well, I'm so far on the other end of that spectrum, I'm trading money for time.
Right. That's a good way to say it. Yes. Yeah. So, like, someone can be like, well, that's cool and all, like what you guys are talking about, but I don't even know how to start having a driving process of maximizing relationship build on the front end, because my time is spent just trying to manage the whirlwind of my business.
Yep.
Like, all the things you don't see behind the scenes.
Yes. Can I take this one right there?
Go right ahead,
That's a
man.
great point, man. Okay, so once again, I'm trading time for money.
Yeah.
Money for time with that philosophy. I was in that exact position where I had a very limited staff. I literally ran what I would call skeleton crew now. I thought I was fully staffed. but I did not have enough people to perform on the level I wanted to perform at on the relationship side. So I literally just went out and bought more people. Like, I went and hired more staff, which means that my overhead went up, but my production went up. I was able to get enough staff in to facilitate the relationships that I wanted to facilitate. And so I went and bought more people's time, which means that my overall capacity for time within my business has literally doubled since I did that, because
Yes.
I have twice as many people. Well, twice as many people times 10 hours a day, you do the math. It's like, cool, I've hired in the last, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 new employees.
Yeah.
I had 5.
Yeah.
I've literally more than doubled. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? 6 more employees at 50 hours a week. I literally bought 300 hours a week more capacity for service.
I love it. Now, that's a great tease, and we're going to do a deep dive on just talking about that type of stuff next time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So so system optimization then, well, that's a great point to springboard off of. It's got to maximize that type of a result. So then someone's going to ask, well, what do you do to automize your systems? I can only speak to that in my industry.
Sure.
So my relationship focus is on being the advisor.
Right.
You know what advisors do? They
Advise.
They educate. Do they construct portfolios? Well, most financial professionals would say, yes, I construct portfolios. I bring the client in. I sell them on my portfolio. The client's value in me is my ability to construct portfolios. I guarantee you I can hire someone better than you that is all they do all day is construct portfolios.
Sure.
Why am I constructing portfolios? Why not automate that process?
Right.
And I'll tell you right now, that's sacrilegious in my industry. Someone will be like, what do you mean you don't construct your portfolios? No, listen, my job is to advise, it is to educate.
Right.
I can have other people construct portfolios, bring those portfolios to my client, and I'm educating them and advising them on what they should do.
Right.
Do you know what that freed me up on?
What that
More
freed you up
time to
on?
do that.
Yes.
Less time constructing portfolios.
Makes a big difference, man. I'm going to throw this sausage on, but keep
Go right
going,
ahead.
dude. Keep
well,
on going.
tell us about this sausage.
Man, this
what are we
is just
doing?
Jimmy Dean hot sausage. I just put them in patties, just like you would normally. And we're going to throw them on the grill and grill them up like hamburgers.
Heck yeah.
Why not? We're going to grill everything for breakfast this morning. So, all right, got those pressed out. We're just going to throw those on, let them sizzle for a little bit, and we'll come back in a second and flip those over and go from there. So,
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Did I tell you that I got the sink installed on the back of my patio?
oh, that's awesome, man.
So I have a legitimate outdoor kitchen.
I do not have a legitimate outdoor
I
kitchen.
told my wife.
I have a grill and a bar.
Yes, you do.
So, a bar and grill.
Yeah, there it is. I told my wife now, hey, breakfast is on the grill. Like, everything's on the grill. Once I get a pit boss, everything is on the frickin' grill.
Yeah, this
Yep.
is my first time trying breakfast on the grill, so I'm pretty excited.
She's down for that idea. You're like, absolutely.
well, it's
So-
less dishes.
Yeah, and less time focusing on cooking. She hates cooking. So the idea is going back to optimization. I can't begin to tell you how many hours that I've freed up. By the way, I'm a financial advisor. What's my job? Again,
Advise.
advise.
Teach. Yep.
Is it to do research?
Well, part of that is involved in.
Or I can automatize all of my research.
Okay.
That's another part. Because now, rather than spending hours going out and looking for information, I can hire the best minds to bring that information to me.
Right.
And I guarantee you they will extrapolate the most relevant information pertaining to the markets and portfolios a lot faster than I will. They will process it a lot faster.
Okay.
And they'll be able to deliver it to me in briefs faster than I would be able to create my own dossiers.
Cool. Let's break down automation just real quick, because I think that there's some question marks involved in what we're talking about. 'Cause
Go ahead.
When we talk about automation, in general, we think something that happens on its own.
Sure.
But in business, that's not really the case. When we're talking about automation, we're talking about creating turnkey systems and processes
Yes, we are.
that are self-sustaining, but do require constant input. We basically simplified the process or procedure down to its simplest format and applied all of the resources necessary in one compiled location, so that way everything happens in the most efficient manner.
That's exactly where I was trying to go with that. Absolutely, yeah. So all these examples that I'm bringing basically is to achieve that end result. And you'd be surprised. When you look at your business and all of the facets of your business, and you look about creating these turnkey systems, you can see that there's a lot that you can delegate.
Yes, and you want to delegate as much as possible because you want to be working on your business, not in your business, or working on the relationship, not on the work.
Your business ultimately is what you invest your time in, your most limited resource. And if you're investing all of this limited resource into these other things, then that is your business and not the relationship. And you're going to have to construct some type of a pay model that reflects that.
Sure.
And what we're saying is shift the business.
Yeah.
To making your business nothing but the relationship, so your pay structure can focus on the relationship. Yep. And then in the end, what that will do is that will create a much, much deeper brand, a much more loyal customer base.
Well, and staff as well.
And that will allow you to expand and scale faster.
Yes.
Because in the end, that is all people care about is your business. People do not care about portfolio construction.
Well,
people do not care about market research.
The one thing I've learned in scaling is the only way you scale is with people in general.
Yes.
People is scaling. Yes, it takes money. Yes, it takes vision. Yes, it takes supplies, resources, all those things. But you can actually bootstrap almost every single one of those factors. The one thing you can't bootstrap is people, because A, you got to have staff to serve, B, you got to have a client to serve, and if you don't have both of those,
you don't really have a business.
Then you have no growth.
Yep. Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
And so all of your growth and scalability is 100% people and relationship dependent. Everything else can be trimmed and cut and chopped and made do with. But you can't make do without those.
And that's, dude, that's so well put. And that's not to say that these other areas are not important. I'm not trying to minimize that.
They're factors, but they're not they're not the deciding factor.
They're not what makes me a financial advisor.
Right.
What makes me a financial advisor is advising and educating clients along their life journey. Sure. And making sure I'm putting all of the pieces together. And that we're weighing all the pros and cons.
And we get into that with even in my business and even in ministry. I mean, relationship, all these things tie together. It's really about meeting people where they're at, and like that's what I do really well. Is I am having a shitty day, and I can meet them at their shitty day and say, "Cool, how can I help?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're on the other end where like, hey, I want to help you build the future that you dream of, and I'm going to meet you right where you're at. And right now you're not there, but I can help you get there.
Yeah. Build the future you want to dream of, and then at the same time, like I just had a client that passed away this week, prepare for those things that are the most tragic so that we're the best prepared for them. Yeah, there's both elements.
Right.
The other part of that, though, that we haven't touched on yet is that when you do this, when you stop focusing on these things and you start focusing on the only thing that is your business, and you create turnkey strategies to automate the rest of your business, two things happen. One, you identify what can actually be done by a computer algorithm.
Yep.
And you spend none of your time doing what a computer can do. Number two, on turnkey strategies like portfolio, like literally Vanguard has sold the fact that portfolios can be constructed by computer algorithms for 35 basis points.
Right.
And I have financial advisors trying to tell clients that they can do a better job for like 120 basis points.
Okay.
Like, or 200 basis points.
Right.
Like, your value better be something else.
Yeah, you
right?
better be like
Yeah.
10xing what the computer can do,
Which you can't.
which you can't.
Yeah. So the idea is all these other areas that are important, you delegate it to someone whose expertise specializes in that area.
So that's part of
All of my marketing.
part of automation is staying in your lane. What am I
Yes.
most effective at? Who can I find people that are most effective at these things that I don't have time or expertise to execute at the level I want to execute in, and hiring those people either on your team or outsourced to
Yes.
another team.
Yes.
And that's a big part of it. I outsource all of my marketing because that's not something I specialize in. I need it. It's how we start to facilitate a relationship. It's that awareness.
Yes.
And it gets people in and lets me do what I do best, which is form relationships and deliver on expectation. And so we outsource that. I hire some of the best qualified technicians. So that way I've got someone that knows what they're doing on a car. I'm not out there working on cars. I've got people that do that for me.
So I think we've done a good enough job describing what automation, my stuttering problem, man, I have a hard time saying that word, what that really is, how that fits to the paradigm of a primary operating principle, and why. I think that we've done a good job hammering that home, so I want to pitch a follow-up question.
Okay.
But before, let's turn to someone who could potentially be our audience. Did we do a good job, guys? Do y'all think? Or do we need to spend some more time? Go ahead and give us some feedback. Do we need to really delve on defining automation, or do you think we did a good job building that out?
I think I understood. I think making the distinction of, I think you did a good job, to say it short. And what I was listening for was how much of it is like click a button and it does it for you versus like doing it.
Automation through a system.
Yeah,
Through a system, and it takes more than like, signing up for the free thing that can spit out the results. Does that make sense? Because
without a doubt.
And then there's automation.
Yeah.
There's automation that takes a lot of skill and knowledge to know what you're doing, and then there's automation that is for the lazy people.
Yeah.
And I think you did a good job explaining the difference.
Do me a favor, keep that bit, our conversation here in the podcast, because that was great add-in.
For sure. I'm going to wrap that up and send it home. Because at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about relationship and value add. So our upfront value add isn't really a value add if it doesn't facilitate relationship building.
Yes.
Okay. Now, automation is also not effective automation if it doesn't improve your efficiency and free up time to contribute to building relationship.
Yes.
So our value add and our automation all contributes to growing a bigger pot of relationship.
So here's the $1 million question then. Because I know, man, if I was listening to this podcast and I heard us having this type of conversation, the question would be, that sounds amazing, but I don't know if I can afford to do that. What is your answer to that?
Okay.
And it is a legitimate question.
It is a legitimate question. I had positioned myself for growth, so I could afford to do this whenever I discovered it and made the decision to do it. I was positioned for it. There's so many factors there to put that into a lump sum. I think that's a case by case scenario because, man, if you're a solopreneur, that's not an excuse. You are everything. Outsource what you can't afford to outsource, and man, make your relationship building so important that the cost isn't a factor. Man, put in the extra time. I actually read a quote this morning from Zach Galifianakis that said, it's a great quote. He said, everybody spends so much time focusing on the hustle and the grind, and they forget that success also comes from rest and rejuvenation.
Sure.
And we spend so much time in a startup as a solopreneur grinding that we're not grinding in the right area. And I'm going to tie this back into two books. There's a book called The One Thing, and there's another book called The 80-20 Principle. Mm-hmm. And the 80-20 Principle, those two books complement each other. The 80-20 Principle is something that says you're going to spend 20% of your time, or 20% of your efforts are going to generate 80% of your results. 80% of your efforts are going to generate 20% of your results. And so this is about rearranging your priorities of how you spend your time and focus to get the biggest impact, which we know is relationships. So let's start spending a lot more time focusing on the relationship and a lot less time actually developing results, because results can be bought. Results can be outsourced. Results can be all these other things that we just spent the last hour talking about. And spend more time focusing on your relationship. It literally costs you more to focus on the result than it does on the relationship. So that's not an excuse in the beginning. Now, on the other side of that, you end up with established businesses that are running pretty big budgets. They've got overhead. They've got staff. Where to transform that business model to the primary operating principle actually costs money in tens of thousands of dollars, because you're retrofitting an existing business that's already operating at a pretty big capacity.
Okay, so speak to that component.
To that component, I would say, once again, we don't want to go half-hearted, but you can kind of piece this in step by step and say, man, I don't have the staff to do everything that I want, but I can shift my focus. And I can say, you know what, I'm going to focus on the relationship, and I'm going to spend this extra time up front with these customers, or figure out where I can afford to give value up front, even if that is just my time and my face and my conversation with you, to help you understand how we do business and what my priorities and goals are. And that costs, once again, almost nothing. To transform your whole business to what I've done, to where I've got all these systems and everybody's participating, and I've hired more staff and bought more equipment and invested all this money into developing these relationships, man. Focus to getting there, man. Take your pay cut and say, I'm going to invest in myself and my business, and I'm going to reduce my personal income to go back in.
That right there is 100% the number one point.
And that's what I've done.
Yes.
I said, man, I'm making this much money and I'm comfortable. I have a good lifestyle. I literally have taken a 50% pay cut on my own accord, so I have that other 50% of my income to dump back into this thing and make it happen now. Yes. And so, do I have money in the business? No, but if you're a business owner that has money, then you should be putting it back in your business. You're stagnant if you're not reinvesting, and maximize your reinvestment. Like, for example, say we do a net month, and let's just use round numbers and say we made 50 grand net in a month, which isn't the case, but that's easy math. So 50 grand, cool. I'm going to give out probably 15,000 of that in bonuses to my staff to show my appreciation for bringing so much money into my business and providing a high quality service. So guess what? That's 25% of my revenue back out, or 25% of my profits back out the door, having impact, changing lives, developing relationships right off the top, in my staff, in my house. Okay? Then the rest of that, I'm going to take almost all of it, and I'm going to dump it back in more marketing, advertising, finding new ways to add value up front, facilitating better systems. Even if that means hiring somebody to come in, evaluate my business, and find these opportunities for me that I can't see.
Yeah.
Which I have also personally done.
Yeah.
Because I can't see everything, because sometimes you're too close to the problem. So sometimes paying an outsider that is an expert at what you're trying to accomplish come in and explain to you how you can do things differently is worth the money.
Yeah.
And I take all that extra money that I was making and I dump it all back in every month.
Yeah.
And my thought is, once again, for simple math, if I'm making 50 grand the way we're doing business now, and I reinvest that for the next 2 years, 3 years, or even 6 months, whatever, and I transform this, I'm not happy with 50 grand for whatever reason. Like, I think I can do better. I'm going to reinvest that until that 50 grand turns into 150 grand. And then I want to take that 150 grand, improve my lifestyle a little bit, and reinvest all that money again and turn that 150 grand into 300 grand a month, into 500 grand a month, into $1 million a month, and so on and so forth into eternity, because I just want to constantly be growing and doing better, and that requires constant reinvestment. And I completely separate my personal finances and my business finances, so that money's never mine. It's not mine till I write myself a check and put it in my bank account.
Yep.
And I never view it that way.
Yep.
And so let the business have its money
that's so great,
to
man.
continue to grow. And so even if you don't have the money, you do. Have greater discipline, reduce your personal liabilities, and go out there and execute.
Yeah, man.
That's perfect. The only thing I would add to that is you have to keep in mind that when you're building this, the reason why you have to reduce your personal outtake to just the bare minimum as possible and focus on your business and reinvesting into the business is because you're not creating what your business is at now. You're creating the foundation of what your business is going to grow into.
Well, it creates...
And you have to be willing to be able to do that.
And it creates a mindset shift too, because a lot of people, they get into business and they end up in this position where they think they own a business, but they actually own a job.
Yes, that's
this business
probably most people.
Is my income.
Yep.
Well, guess what? If your business is your income, then it's a job. It's not a business. When it becomes a business, it's not for the purpose of just my income. That is a piece of the pie, but my business is focused around impact. Yeah. How am I changing the world around me? How am I changing my community?
That's an
How
enterprise.
am I changing lives?
Yep.
That's a business.
Yep.
If all I'm worried about is the money I'm putting in my bank every Friday afternoon, it's a job. And don't fool yourself on that.
And this podcast is probably not for you. Yeah.
Also true. Well, it is. I think it's worth listening to, but
yeah.
But agreed. Okay, so on the eggs, man, on the grill.
We're doing eggs. I've never done eggs on a grill. So
I haven't either. So this is the first try for me. So what I'm going to do is actually take these little foil cups that I made. I literally just took some flat foil, took a plastic cup, wrapped it around the outside, and created these sealed cups. And I'm just going to crack an egg in each one.
Did you see this done somewhere?
I did not. I just made this up this morning.
Wow.
And
we're breaking new ground on the grill this morning.
Yep.
You have literally no idea what this is going to turn out looking like.
No idea. So we're going to find out. This should be exciting.
Hey, for all of you watching, like, if he sucks it, then at least the potatoes and
the potatoes and sausage are going to be good. We can't lose on that.
The potatoes and the sausage came out good. But that looks really cool.
Yeah, so we're just going to crack an egg in each one.
And we'll find out really quickly if it works or not.
Yep, pretty much.
I would be interested to YouTube different ways to cook eggs on a grill.
Eggs on a grill? I'm curious as well.
There's probably 100 different ways to do it.
Probably. I'm sure most people probably use some form of a skillet on a grill.
Probably.
But this is West Texas, and we do things the hard way, so we're going to use foil. And then what I'm actually going to do on top of that is I'm going to take a little bit of cheese, just thick cut shredded cheese. I'm going to throw that right on top of the eggs.
Do it.
Not a lot, just a little bit. Let it do its thing.
Now, do we think the eggs are going to stick to the foil?
I don't know, man. We're going to find out. The cool thing about it is it's flat foil that's just folded up, so we can just on the plate just fold that foil out flat.
Yeah. Oh, so that's what you were thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And so you don't really have to worry so much about the eggs sticking, I don't think.
But
I could be wrong. We're going to find out. And I think that the cheese with the oils and fats in it will probably help kind of prevent that from happening as well.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to throw a little bit of salt and pepper on there.
Nice.
Just
some of that red salt, huh?
Yeah, pink salt.
Pink salt.
Yes. And then
some
a little
of that bougie
bit of
salt.
Coarse black pepper. We're just going to set those back in there and let them do their thing. And then I'm going to pull out that ham steak in a minute.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to let that cook on the top rack right above the eggs and kind of drip down in there and add a little bit of flavor to them.
Nice.
And go from there.
Nice.
And the ham steak is pre-cooked, so really it's just about warming it up anyway.
Right. And this is just a quick breakfast that you can put right on the grill.
Right on the grill. First breakfast on the grill.
Hey,
we're going to find out how that goes.
And if you don't have a skillet, this is how you could do eggs.
Aluminum foil. Cool. We're just going to let that sit up there and warm up.
Oh, that's going to taste good.
I think so, man.
I think so. That was a great idea, dude. That was a good idea. Living up to that title, Pit Boss.
Cool. So let's, I know we've been going here for about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. So let's What do you got left, do you think, to wrap this up? What's a good note to end on, Jason?
Yeah, that probably was a good note to end on.
Eggs and bacon. Eggs, sausage, and ham.
But no, I mean, just like the last point about cost. Because in the end, you know that most people listening to this aren't going to execute on it, and it's all going to boil down to not to the fact that we're not sold on this way of thinking. Of course, anyone that hears this, and especially when we talk about the success we've had in such a short period of time, want this. It's just the cost.
Okay, I think I've got a final point that I think is a good way to wrap this up is in cost. I hear this talked about occasionally, but I don't think even we haven't spent any time really delving into it, and I think it'd be something worth really having a whole podcast about, is opportunity cost.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Because
let's take it there.
Everybody is really spends so much time looking at, once again, that bottom line mentality. What's this cost me now? What's this cost me, like, in the process? What am I getting out of it later? What are you losing by not doing this?
Long term.
What does this cost me to not move in this direction? And we've actually touched on it a lot, but never identified it for what it is, which is opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Will you lose your business if you don't move forward?
That's entirely possible and probable.
It is, because if someone else in your marketplace is doing this, how are you competing with them? And the answer is you can't.
Yep.
There is no competition with relationship.
Yep.
I mean, think about that. It goes back to that saying, blood is thicker than water. Well, why? Because of the relationship.
Yeah.
I'll pick my brother over my friend on any single day. And I'll pick my friend over a stranger any single day, right or wrong. Right or wrong, we don't even care. We're indifferent to it.
As long as they're getting the job done.
As long as they're getting the job done.
Yeah.
We're fulfilling those relationships. We're not fulfilling these jobs or these things. The relationship takes priority in every circumstance. And we've been taught that since we were this big. We act that way since we were this big. That, like, bros before hoes. I mean, all those types of conversations, that all those things really facilitate that the relationship is paramount. It is the single most important dynamic in any event, period. And so if you're not doing this, then somebody else will. Even if they're not doing it now, I promise it's coming. And if you aren't moving in that direction, you will get beat out.
Yes.
And they will get market share.
Yes.
And you will lose whatever you've got. Even if you don't completely die, you will dwindle to a point of misery in your business that it's not worth getting up in the morning anymore.
Man, I know so many financial advisors in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that are still 100% transactional, or they're of this mindset, and they would resist what you and I are actually talking about today.
Yep.
And it's because they've built themselves up a book of business to where they can coast. But that's only a matter of time.
Right.
You're like 10 to 15 years away from basically, it's lulling them into a false sense of security.
Right.
Especially if you're in your 60s and 70s, because why would anyone trust that you've built up in a lifetime of being their financial advisor, even though it's through a transactional paradigm, just simply because of your age? And I know that's hard to hear, but why would anyone that has a relationship with a 60 to 70-year-old financial advisor say, I want exactly what I have right now with my guy, I want it 10 years down the line?
Right.
When I'm not even sure that he's going to be around, or if she's even going to have the mental acuity to be able to do this, or just, let's face it, they're not going to be focused on me. They're going to be focused on someone else.
Right.
So it's just a ticking time bomb. Whether it's in your industry, which if people don't do this in your industry, you'll feel the effects really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't do this in my industry, depending on your age and the time you've been in the business, that could prolong, but there's still an expiration date on it.
Right. I agree. So I think that's a good way to wrap this up, is it's not just the upfront obvious cost that you have to evaluate. It's what does this cost me not to change the way I'm doing business and put relationships first, because I think that if you really sit down and are honest with yourself about what that looks like, you realize that that cost is far greater than any dollar amount that's in your bank account.
Heck yeah. No, that's a good point to wrap on. So next week is execution, man. We're ready to talk about that?
Absolutely.
That'll be exciting.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for joining us for our brunch this morning. Hopefully that y'all have a great day yourselves and that this was useful to you. And once again, hopefully you just enjoyed the natural atmosphere with the birds chirping and the sun rising and the dogs barking and all the things that happen on our back porch.
Take care and God bless.